Bonnie Duncan is the guest on Meet Our Mentors today. Stick around. We're going to have some fun. Bonnie, my dog is barking in the background. She loves to be in here in the studio. And then like 30 seconds before we're supposed to go live, she starts to bark, of course. Do you have dogs, Bonnie? Do you have dogs? That's what everyone out there in the United States wants to know.
Yes, I have one dog and a guest dog visiting.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Wonderful. Wonderful. See, even Nappy is barking in the comments.
Yes.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to Meet Our Mentors. And Bonnie, welcome to you. I have been to I think a few festivals where your show has been performed, and I've been doing something that I haven't been able to get to see your show. So thank you so much for sharing some of the videos of your performances. I am now a complete fan of yours. So thanks so much for being here today and talking a little bit about you and about the mentors and about this whole thing. I'm really excited to get to talk to you a little bit.
I'm excited to be here. I'm very excited to be here. It was fun to look back and think about my work because I don't usually do that. I tend to just keep going forward.
Right. And I mean, you sent us about 1 million photos, and as I was going through your photos, I saw that it looked like that you had obviously a dancer's background. Am I off on that? Is that how you started performing, or what was the bug for you?
Yeah, I was involved in a lot of theater, and I grew up dancing, and then I joined a dance company. This is the company Snappy Dance Theater, and I performed for 8 years with them, company member. We were a collaborative company, and we performed original, physical, funny, acrobatic pieces all over the world. So I feel like I kind of grew up there, and we did a lot of body manipulation and puppetry aspects to our work. And so around that same time, I got interested in puppetry and decided to make a puppet.
And so, like, people don't just get interested in puppetry, do they? I mean, was there something that sparked you? Was there, like, what was it that was your hook?
I have the usual, I'm a child of the 80s, it was the Muppets. So I think hopefully there's a photo of a green puppet with orange hair. I made a puppet. I got a book. I got the foam book by, oh my God.
Drew Allison.
Yes,
right?
thank you.
Yeah,
oh my God.
yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to learn to make a puppet. So I made this puppet, Egan. And I took him into a classroom that I was teaching in, and the kids were like, whoa, like I completely disappeared, and they were in love. And I was like, this is it. This is magic. I want more of this. And so I went to the Boston Area Guild of Puppetry, and that's how I got started. Was I went there and I talked to people and I asked questions, and then they introduced me to more people, and I just kind of went from there.
Nice. That's a great hook to get into it. And so you were already doing performances, and were you also a teaching artist as well? Is that?
Yes, I've been a teaching artist since the very beginning, integrating drama and theater, puppetry movement into curriculum. So I used to test it in my classroom, in classrooms where I would teach, and I still do. Whenever I'm developing a new show, I'm always like, hi friend, can I come visit your class? Or I'm in a classroom and I test things out on kids, whether they're my own children or in the classroom.
And so are you still mixing media? Are you still using, are you still producing shows other than puppet theater? Or is puppet sort of the primary way that you would classify the shows that you're currently working on and developing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I often act as a costume designer on other people's shows, and I've done some like dramaturgy, like helping people. But I have been mainly doing puppetry and physical theater. And then I'm really right now interested in interactive work. I think all of our time on Zoom, I did these interactive Zoom play experiences with families, and I was like, families want to play. So I came out of that with wanting to do I was actually a puppet in this piece with him.
Full circle, full
Yeah,
circle, right?
full
Yeah.
circle. And I'm doing more interactive work. So we're doing audio adventures for families and also interactive pieces where families build an art installation together. So I'm wanting to keep expanding it out. So it's not just people watching me, but people get to experience the magic that I experience when I'm making and performing. And I want that for everyone. So I'm really playing with that right now.
So I noticed in your sort of audience demo talk back at the end of Squirrel Stole My Underpants, you were really encouraging the kids and also I would say the grown-ups in the audience to produce their own theater at home. And I noticed too that in, you know, when you went to online work, when the pandemic hit, that that was a big part of what you were doing with your online presence, is you were trying to, you know, I would say spur creativity at home so people would create their own stuff. So has that always been a part of your work as a teaching artist and as a performer?
Absolutely. I think that when it comes to what was I was drawn to puppetry in the beginning because I didn't know anyone who did it. I didn't know anything about it. I found a book, I figured it out. It was all DIY. Like you had to figure it out. And that was my favorite thing. And so I still encourage and dream that up. And when I create shows with kids, they're making it up. I don't put a show on them, we develop it together. And so that call to action at the end of Squirrel is totally my belief through and through as an artist, as a teacher, as a human. And a lot of that came from I would be in my neighborhood and this person would come up, and first the little kid would stare at me. And then the parent would say, "Oh my God, we acted out your show for like 3 weeks in the laundry basket with the underpants, but they were clean." Like they talked about it. We didn't do the scary parts because scary parts are too much. And that was what I wanted with that. The aesthetic is built to say you can make this too out of clothes. So that's definitely an ethos of mine.
So when I was looking at your website, and I, down at the bottom on the about page, you have a list of collaborators, and that was really exciting to see, because in as the credits rolled in Squirrel Stole My Underpants, I saw that you had a puppet builder, and you had a set designer, and you had a costume designer. And there's an assumption I think that I make with puppeteers that they do all of the work, and that can be really burdensome as a, you know, as a solo performing artist, that it's like, got to build the puppets, you got to write the script, you've got, and so you are getting to collaborate with other people on your pieces. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm smarter as a collaborator because I believe all of our ideas are better than just one person's, or at least for me. When it comes to the work, I found that I was trying to do everything myself and I couldn't. And that was holding me back because you still have these ideas and you want them to come out. So with Squirrel, I actually did build everything except the costume because I have a friend and costume designer, Penny Panette, who I've collaborated with for many years, and I wanted to work with her. And I live with my husband is a director. He's a theater director. I met him doing costumes for his shows, and he and I work together to create the story, and he directs it. And working with the set designer, like I'm not a set designer, but I have ideas, so it's never a go build me a set. It's an iterative, like figure it out over and over. We're not we're not a very efficient company because I have to explore all the parts. I have to know it's going to work or not, and I have to test it all out. And that's
Mm.
part of, I think, the magic of our shows is that it's not straight, and it's not straight up the run of a narrative. It does meander because I go way far away from where I start and come back to it.
If you don't mind, I'd love to watch just the 1 minute teaser of Squirrel Stole My Underpants, and just to give our audience an idea, if they haven't seen your work before, just to give them an idea of what we're talking about, and then I'd love to talk about that, because I was just smitten by that show. So let me pull this up here, and here we go. That was such a dark part of that show. I was watching, there's a couple of squirrely little ones in the front row, and I was paying attention and listening for them on the video, and watching them during that very very dark part of the show. What that doesn't show is that you start with an empty space. Essentially all that's there is is sort of the crossbar and the two support beams that are holding it up, and everything else is it's an empty space. And I loved that you started out with the empty space. There's so many moments in that show that I was just really taken with, and that was one of them. Is that you just have a blank canvas essentially to start with. So can you talk to me a little bit about your process of developing a show like Squirrel?
Oh, yeah. Each show has its own process. And we're just starting a new show, which has a totally different process. But partly, I always want to be learning something. And if I know how to do it, I have no interest in it. And so I'm not really a brilliant at anything. I think I'm pretty good at performing, but I've like always have to be challenging and testing myself. So when it came to Squirrel, my husband and I were talking about things that would be funny and things that would like what could be stolen, what could this, and then squirrels came up, and then we were like pancakes, no squirrels, oh, and then underpants was like, oh yeah, that's it, squirrel stole my underpants. And so you'd think that the show writes itself from there, but it doesn't, because how do you write a show that it's about 35 minutes that really like encapsulates that isn't, that keeps turning and shifting? And partly what we do in our shows, we stay one step ahead of our audience. We want to give them just enough and then surprise them. So every time I perform that show, a kid's like, but what's it? Oh, like there's this question where they're almost there. Oh. And so, especially in the scene, we call it the dark forest, but kids talk to us and parents talk to us all the time about that scene. We want them to be a little scared. We want you to practice being afraid, knowing you're safe, knowing you're with your family, you're with people in a community, you're all together. And they trust us by then enough that we're going to save the day, that we're going to come out of that. And that's something that I love about the piece, is that we performed it, hundreds of times all over the world. We get the same responses almost everywhere. And Brendan and Tony, who play music, they're so amazing as musicians, like totally amazing. And
how far are you into the piece before you begin to bring in the music? Because the music, like it felt like just a really lovely supporting layer that helped communicate the feeling of the darkness of the dark scene, and the lightness of the chase scenes, and all of the wonderfulness. It was really supportive.
Yeah, for Squirrel, they came in late because I just met them. I asked them to do a show. Brenda was like, sure, I'll do it for one night. And I was like, okay, great. And now it's like 10 years later, because that show actually turns 10 next week. Which
oh, you're kidding me. Neat.
Amazing. So they came in very late for that piece. And we learned as we went, and we learned as we performed. We were getting to know each other. But for the subsequent pieces and our most recent show, Go Home Tiny Monster, we were there at the very beginning, and they were there for almost not all rehearsals, but many of them, playing and improvising, because partly it was a story that we all shared because it came from shared experience, and they wanted to be there early in the process. At the same time, just like in music, movie composing, the music is not finished until the very, very end. And even at that, just like every show,
it's got to be still evolving, right? I mean, if they're playing live, and yeah.
And like it's there, we know it, and we often say to each other, oh, I'm following you. No, I'm following you. And we have no idea who's leading, but we get to the same spot. And so as we keep performing it, the music still develops and the show still develops, because it's such a live piece. All of them are. And I love that. I'm always chasing that perfect show. I think, I don't know how you feel about it as a performer, but I always am like, yes.
I absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. I mean, we found some old archival, like VHS tapes of our old shows, and so I watched a few, and the bones are there, but the flesh of the show has really developed, and the movement has certainly gotten better, because I think the more you perform, the better you get as a puppeteer. But the story has changed and evolved, mostly in how it's paced, and
Mm,
how I trust an audience so much more than I trusted them back then. I had very little faith that my audience would be with me, which was probably
yeah.
my own insecurities, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah.
No, I feel that way too. When I first create a show, I'm like, this isn't working. They hate me. It's like my inner dialogue, which is terrible. But, I then have to trust the show. And it was interesting with Go Home Tiny Monster. We premiered it, we performed it, we kept we kept moving it around, and then we finally got it right, and then the pandemic hit and we had put it away. I was so afraid to bring it back out, and we brought it back out, and it was hard to remount, because the shows are hard to remount because it wasn't in our bones the way other shows were. But then we like found it. We like found the thing, and it all was there. And partly because I trusted it. I trusted the content in a way that I wasn't sure was going to be just right. And so it's always fascinating when that happens.
So the tone of Squirrel versus Tiny Monster, they're very, first of all, both shows I felt like Squirrel had like the through line, right? Like a squirrel steals your underwear, and then your character is trying to get it back. I mean, that's the story. That's the
Mhm.
entire story. And then, but the depth that you have pursuing, the path to the simple goal of the story is very complex. And it felt like there was some very dark themes being played out into, and I don't know if it was just stuff that I was putting onto it, but then when I watched Tiny Monster after watching Squirrel, it was like themes of homelessness and displacement, and it was told in a very, very simple way, but had some really dark and interesting themes. Can you talk a little bit about performing that style of story for young audiences?
Yeah. Well, I have to give credit and props to Paul Vincent Davis, because I wanted to make a new show, and I was like, Paul, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, do what you know. And he was like, you should do something about your house, because I had like a lot of damage to my house. And I had to move out, and had 3 young kids. They were 4 and 6, and we were out for 6 months, and it was a very difficult time. And Brendan and Tony were roommates, and their house burned down, and
Mm.
so they were without a home, and we all lost a lot of our possessions, and it was just so hard. And we were like, we're making a show about this. How do we do that without using words, with using joy, with using the language that we use? So we knew the plot. Girl's house gets damaged, and then she rebuilds it, but how do you get there? And so the process for that was much more challenging. First, you have to like build the care for the puppets and the family, and then you have to do something really hard, which is, just have a tragedy in the middle of a show. And how do you do that for 3-year-olds? And we learned the hard way and the easy. We kind of developed it as we went, like fits and starts. We tested that show so many times because we just wanted to make sure the tone was right, and that was super important to us.
I'm sorry. I feel like the elephant in the room. If you haven't seen Bonnie's work, everything that I've seen of yours is nonverbal. Is that pretty much all of your work? You don't really use words to tell the stories, right?
Correct. I am
Yeah.
experimenting with words, and I know how to act and perform with words, but I really like the challenge of not, because we talk so much. I'm
I
like,
oh I
I
agree,
love
and I
it.
think it's such with puppetry. When I taught a few classes at the university, the very first project I would have them do was a 5 minute nonverbal piece where they had to commute everything with movement, because it's baptism by fire. It's like, if you can move your little hand puppet and communicate what you're trying to do without words, then you're a step ahead. And so did dance influence that for you, or was it because generally dance is nonverbal as well for the most part?
Absolutely, dance influenced it. Our dance company did a lot of theatrical pieces without words, and my husband's theater company actually performed original shows in gibberish. So they would do the whole thing in blah blah, which was, you'd think, oh, that sounds annoying, but it actually is beautiful because your visuals, your movement tells all the story. We're smarter than we think we are, if that makes sense. So the interesting part about Tiny Monster is that the second half of the show is interactive. So I had to not only like perform it, I had to figure out how to elegantly get our audience to participate without using words. And so that again was yet another challenge that we were working towards. And I think we found the balance. And we've had amazing response from the show because it is an age appropriate way to talk about home insecurity, to talk about climate change in terms of a storm. Spoiler, a storm takes down this house and she has to rebuild. She has to leave her home. So there's like immigration, refugee. There's a lot going on, even though it's me telling the story. And that was also something I was very concerned about, was I needed to tell my story and not assume anything about anyone else's story. So
I was watching it last night, and I'm living in California right now, and so we've had lots of storms and lots of wind and lots of trees falling into people's houses and lots of people displaced by floods. And so that was my context of watching the show, and it was incredibly poignant, just from a living in California perspective. What were some of the failed ways that as you were trying to elicit the audience to help essentially rebuild the house? What were some of the ways that didn't work for you? Can you talk a little bit about those some?
Oh, well, okay. So I have to talk about the Puppet Show Place Theater because they're amazing and they
Absolutely.
always support our development of work. And Roxy Myron was always amazing at being like, you want to try it? Great, let's do it. So we had this day where we tested out part of the show, and I actually had people come up and try to hang up the backdrop looked different than the photo below. I was directing people on stage to hang up the
Oh,
curtain. Oh
like
my God.
kids actually up on stage? Or
Yes,
oh boy.
it was horrible. I did another one where I had this like box that I built that had this string that came out. I just kept passing it through the audience. Oh, that didn't work because they're like, my box. I will never pass it on. I didn't know how to get it back.
You wanted to keep it. Yeah, nice.
Well, and I wasn't using language. Had I spoken, it would have been easy. But I was like, well, that didn't work. So we found that people can sing together, people can make noise together, people can give me instruction, and they can have power over my direction. So if I do something wrong, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then they'll tell me. So just the hit and miss of that was pretty funny.
Absolutely, though, right? I mean,
but in this sense, I'm a big risk taker, and I'm a big, like, I want to test it. I want to try it. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but.
And so for those that haven't seen the show, what are the techniques that you're using the goal is to get the community, which is the audience, help rebuild the house. And so what are the techniques that you're using that are particularly successful now?
One of them, I have a book that said that a puppet is drawing in, and the puppet looks at me and is like, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. And so the puppet draws on the book and holds up the page, and it says clap. And so everyone in the audience starts to clap, and that cheers me up. And then it says stomp. And then the whole audience starts stomping. And then it says cheer. And then the whole audience cheers. And I'm like, what? I can do it. So they're kind of boosting me as we go. We have two separate moments where they sing. They don't sing words, they sing phrasing, that Brendan and Tony actually come onto stage, and they direct them by starting to sing, and then people just automatically join in. They're not waiting, they're not shy, they're ready to sing. And then I have another one where I do something wrong, and I go in the audience, and they're like, what are you doing? It's so wrong. So then I wait until they tell me what to do. And sometimes that takes a while. but I find that pretty fun.
How much are you noticing the show changing from audience to audience with how they're interacting with you and what they're giving you?
That's a good question. For the most part, they're about the same or it's similar. Sometimes it's the age of the kids. If they're like super small, they're less they're less likely to like call out. It's also post COVID, right at the beginning. They were like, I've never been in a theater. I don't know what I do. So there was that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it depends on the parent, the adults in the room, how boisterous they are, or how quiet and respectful they are. And so that definitely has something to do with it. School groups have no problem
They're the
getting excited
best.
about it.
Oh, they're the
Yeah.
best. Yes, yes. So can we talk a little bit about the puppets in that show, because the design of them and your design aesthetic overall is really really interesting and perfect for the different shows that I've gotten to see. So it's Fern, Dusty, is it Grandpa? What are the other
Mhm.
two characters? What's the fourth character?
Yeah, Grandpa and Junior. And they were built by Marta Ekhogen. She's Norwegian, awesome, amazing artist. And I met her at the O'Neill puppetry conference, and she offered people if they want to use her monsters that she could. So I asked her, and then we collaborated, and she would come to rehearsal and improvise creatures as we talked, and then she would hand them to me and I would test them out, and then I would take them home and I would work in mechanisms so I could function with them, and we would talk back and forth trying to get the size and all of those things larger, because as you can see there's a puppet at the front of that which is gray. It's now yellow and larger, so like a lot of learning on the fly there. But it was really fun to work with those puppets, and partly for this show especially, I really wanted like everything to be soft and cuddly, and I wanted to be handmade, and so I handmade everything in that show. Hand stitched everything. All the set is appliqued and quilted and
Wow.
crocheted, and I really wanted all of those things to be there.
What are those pearls for his teeth? I mean, because those are just brilliant. I just love
They're
that.
so great. They're little like clay beads, and they glow in the dark. So at the
Oh,
end of the
really? Oh,
show, when the
neat.
lights go out, all the monsters' eyes glow.
That's so
It's pretty
cool.
great. Yeah,
That's really great.
Marta's really brilliant, and I loved working with her because we just bounced off each other, and that's part of what I want. Is I want more people to bounce off on, and oh, let's do this, let's try this, and constantly iterating new things.
Fun, fun. So I want to talk about one more thing, and then I want to talk about the mentors that have sort of inspired you or have been there for you. Or I know we've discussed them a little bit so far, but you're doing this amazing project, Little Uprisings,
Mhm.
and I think this sprang from the pandemic, and you're working, I think, with Tanya Nixon Silberg. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that is
And
right.
and this, can you talk a little bit about that project? Because the little bits that I got to see just got me really excited about it.
Yes, if you wanna pull up I'm asking Connie about,
Yeah, we've got Connie doing
yeah.
our tech today. Thank you
Yay,
so much,
Connie.
Connie. She's in North Carolina under a tornado watch right now.
Ah!
So she's got one eye on the window and one eye on the broadcast.
There's a Play for Change 1, photo in the 2013, 2023. I don't know if that helps. So this is Tanya and myself, and we're working together. I met her, she lives in my neighborhood. We go to the playground together, and I know that she's a racial justice educator, and she also is a puppeteer and, has a show called My Night at the Planetarium. And part of as we went on a walk together, and we started talking about how can we blend what we know how to do. And because my work is based in play and joy and community, and her work is based in racial justice and community and truth telling, we're like, let's put it all together and do something. So we created a piece that we're doing in schools, which has a residency, which has a entire story interactive puppet show with kids, with the puppets who are right behind me over here, and you can see them in that picture. And then we also had this huge piece that's an interactive art installation for families, where every family gets a roll of tape, and then they get to build this piece together. that we all see and experience, while talking about racial justice, while talking about change, while talking about perspective and making space for other people's voices and all of these things. So we're really enjoying working together and learning a lot. And I think approaching racial justice, we say that we're liberation through joy and play. And that's something that's super important to both of us.
And are you getting kickback from parents that it's like this isn't a subject that should be talked about to kids, or like how are you dealing with is that happening, or are people just really open to this right now?
Yeah, so that's a space for change right there. So you can see the amazing things
Oh,
parents are
that's
doing.
cool. And was that
Um,
outside because of pandemic stuff? Or are you trying to do the work
Yes,
more
we
out?
now we have an indoor version and an outdoor version now.
Mm,
So,
mm,
so yeah, that's a really timely question because we are in a school right now and having amazing success with we're collaborating with the teachers, developing curriculum, working with students. We're talking about people not being able to have their joy, and if you don't have your joy, you can't have your best day ever. These are
mm.
the terms we're using with kindergartners and the teachers, and it's going very well, but we're getting some pushback from parents. So I spent 3 hours today designing the letter that we're sending home and making sure that, people are pulling their kids. They might ask for the lesson plan, they're asking to visit, and not a lot, but just enough that it is something that we're very aware of, but we're also trying to be very empathetic that people don't know us as well. They don't know that we're approaching this with joy and with our passion and with our goodness and our belief in people. And that's children's innate nature, is to help and to know what fairness is. And so that's all we're wanting to build, as better humans. So that's something that we're focusing on, but we're loving it. We're going to be leaving the curriculum with the teachers, which is really exciting.
I'm really excited to see where this goes because it's needed, and I think it could be something that could be very influential to be able to approach it the way you guys seem to be approaching it. It's just got to be really exciting.
Yeah, it's really fun. It makes us super happy.
Neat, neat. Hey, if anyone has any questions for Bonnie, please feel free to type them into the chat in Facebook. We'll be able to see them here or in the chat in the YouTube channel as well. We would love to hear from you and answer any of your questions. But before we do that, I would love to talk to you a little bit about the mentors, the people that has sort of influenced you. Like, so, like, since you're a teaching artist as part of what you do, did you have teachers that were influencing you or encouraging performance when you were a kid of the age of the kids that you're teaching now?
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't think about that. Well, I would have to go to my high school theater teacher, Mrs. Witt. And this, it kind of, my whole career trajected from here is that the performance class we did 3 days a week, she brought in third graders from all over the county, and we performed an original piece based on Shel Silverstein poetry. And we performed it in ensemble with music and dance and acting out these poems. And we did it for like 4 months out of the year. We performed every day for third graders, and it was awesome.
What a
And
great audience too, right? I mean, that's just right on the cusp of
yeah,
not being too young or and just not being too old either. That's a perfect, what a great audience.
yeah. And as a senior in high school, like, what better way to spend your second period is to go to the dressing room, put on your blacks, and go perform. And I think that's kind of what it started with, in terms of like a teacher that, like, yes, this is what you want to do. And then as I kept going, you know, trying out new things, being in new plays. New play development was big in college. A lot of the plays I was in, I actually don't know the canon very well, but I played in a lot of them, and I costumed new plays. So I kind of have always been at that intersection of new work and new ways of performing.
Neat, neat. And I saw on your list of influencers, Hugo and Inez, and that's very, very clear in some of the work that I got to watch. And Philippe Gentil also very I could see those influences in your work, and two of my favorites as well. Can you talk a little bit about their influence?
Yeah, I went to the Henson International Festival in 2020 and my mind was like blown. Like everything I saw was totally amazing and I was so like wide-eyed and ready to take it all in. And the pieces that I saw there, the Mabu Mines, Peter and Wendy, just
Oh,
like blew my mind. And the Philippe Gentil, I remember being like, I don't understand, I gotta understand, but like all of these at every step. And then the simplicity and the brilliance of Hugo and Inez, it was just like magical. And then the late night experimental pieces, just like this is what I want to do. This is magic and transformative. So I feel like that experience still stays with me. All of those shows do. Absolutely. And I'm constantly seeing new work. And what I love about touring is if you go to a festival, you just see all the shows and you meet all the people. And like, I just want to absorb as much as I can. And so all of my influences are very disparate in many ways. And sometimes you're like, oh, yeah, that's such a Bonnie thing. but, and that's okay.
and then as far as like individuals that were, in puppetry and outside of puppetry, were there particular ones? I know mentor can mean a million different things, but like I have mentors that weren't officially my mentors, but had said that one thing that is still sticking with me today is, and when I'm developing a show, I remember, oh yeah, that's the thing is, can you talk a little bit about those folks as well in your life?
Well, I think Boston has such a thriving puppetry scene. I was so lucky to feel like Bonnie and Andrew Perriali were like my puppet parents. They never officially signed on, but I signed them up. But they like pulled me right into Bag Op and were nurturing me. And I think because Bonnie was a dancer as well, we were like, yes, we are connected. I
Mm,
get this. This is what we want to do. And the same with Paul Vincent Davis, always being there and always being encouraging at every step of the way. And I helped him build the Here Come the Clowns. And so he was always looking to learn from other people. And it was
wow.
so wonderful that way. Same, Allie Lou Curtin was always there to be encouraging, John Bell. And then there's like people, the whole community. I feel like there's so many people I don't want to leave out because it's what I love about puppetry, which is different than the dance community and the theater community, is that everyone is ready to help. They're ready to spill their secrets. They're ready to like make the next great puppet show. And I so deeply appreciate that. And I feel like that's what's given me what I have. And I think Liz Joyce being someone, and Heidi Rugg and Crabgrass, like everyone, if I had a question, I would just call them and they would let me know, well, do this, try this. And some of it was about business and some of it was about the show. Some of it was about traveling. Like, what do you put your stuff in?
Right, right. No,
All
all of it,
those
right?
things. Yeah.
I took
So,
a workshop from Heidi. I don't know how many festivals ago, but the show I performed this morning has a mechanism that was inspired by the workshop that I took from her. And so you're right. There is such a sharing at festivals, and just my friend Nick, who's since passed away, he would bring us over to his house, and he would say, because I'd ask him, well, how are you doing this mouth mechanism? And he'd say, come over, let's build a puppet together. And it was just like the spirit of generosity is just so incredible.
yeah, it just never, it's just amazing. And the same with the O'Neill. I had like being at the O'Neill, working with Marty Robinson, watching his respect and love of people as a director was really inspiring and really like profound in that way. And everyone's giving nature there. In
Mm.
terms of the other participants that I met and other people who were there and the work we got to make, just it I'm just I'm very grateful for that every day. And I feel like we as puppeteers, we might take it for granted, but maybe we don't. I don't know. I feel very, very lucky to have all of these people in my life.
And I know a lot of other children's entertainers, like magicians in particular. They really there's not the same sharing as much as puppeteers do. There's some, but there's still some competition and some holding back. It's
Yeah.
it's nice that that's not such a big part of at least live puppetry.
Yeah, I think, I'm only doing shows for families because of Liz Joyce, so she needs
Really?
credit on that because she was like, "Why don't you have a show for kids? You should make a show for kids." I was like, "I don't perform for kids." And she's like, "You should do that. I'll book you." And I was like, "Okay." So I did, and I made Squirrel. So thank you,
Really?
Liz. Yes, and she has always been and still does. She's like, "More puppet shows for in the world is better for everyone." It's not a
Mm,
competition. It's like better puppet shows is better for all of us. And I try
absolutely.
to
That's
hold
so
that.
true.
That's one that
Yeah.
I definitely hold very dear is that sense of like this will bring the art form up. It will bring us up. Like right now, I'm like, we need more family shows, people. Make family shows.
And good ones too, because like I've had people be surprised at a good show. Like, oh, we've never seen anything like this, and because and which tells me that their attitude was coming in as like, oh, it's gonna be a puppet show, it's gonna be some lady with a felt board kind of thing, and so I think it does like the rising water raises all boats. Is that the saying? I'm sure I just butchered that, but something along those lines.
No, I think that's totally true, and I think, I mean, our goal because I grew up on the Muppets, the dual level shows what I always strive for is that the oftentimes I think parents like my shows almost more than the kids because there's and also people who love theater love our shows. So we do very well in New York because there are a lot of theater goers there because they see it. They see the theater, the theatricality and the inventiveness of surprise. And I think parents coming like, I didn't expect to like this, but I'm so in love. and
Well, I think there was. I mean, when I was growing up, we had Sesame Street, which had a large level of adult humor in it, and certainly then the Muppet Show. But then there was also Looney Tunes and Scooby Doo and the Jetsons and like all of those cartoons. They all had that same sort of like dual level of humor, but. When like Dora the Explorer came out and then Blue's Clues, which was a lovely show, but it was all very innocent and there was never a scary part. And you talked a little bit about that when in Squirrel when they go into the sort of the dark forest of those dark clothes and it's very dark and but to let them know that it is okay to have a scary moment that you're still safe even though you have the theatrical tension I think is something that's missing in it certainly in children's television. I don't see that anywhere.
yeah, we trust our audience and we know that kids are brilliant. They're really smart. And so that's really, really important to us. And the picture that's being shown is brand new. It's from a new show that we're developing. I'm spilling the beans, but it's called Don't Make Me Get Dressed. And we're really wanting to experiment with telling actual kids stories with their voices
So
and
you're going to use words in this show?
I don't know if I am, but there might be words in it. We'll see.
That's very, very exciting. Nice.
But
Nice.
I feel like we really trust kids to get what we're doing. And we trust that they can handle big things and they can handle the truth and they can
Mm.
handle all of those things because they're smart. They're smarter than we are. And so that's something that's really important. I think Brendan and Tony feel that way in their music because their compositions are extremely complex and very cinematic. And we trust that kids are ready for it.
You mentioned that once you learn something, you're sort of done with it. Does that so you've been touring Squirrel less the pandemic for 10 years now. Do you feel are you done touring it? Or have you lost interest in touring it or because it's live and still evolving is that keeping your interest or where are you at with doing your shows repeatedly?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So after the pandemic, I literally was like, I don't know if I still want to do this because I don't know. And then we toured to Atlanta and we were in Roswell, which is this great big space. It was beautiful. It's really cold, but it had so much air conditioning. But um, being on stage doing that show, I was like, yep, I want to be right here. I love this piece. And at every part, I was like, oh, I love this part. No, I love this part. And then I would look over and see Brendan Tomei. I was like, no, I love this part, the thing they do. And so it's still very alive for me. And we'll be actually in the Chicago International Puppet Theater Festival next week with Squirrel, which I'm very excited about.
Fantastic. Is that information on your website?
Yes, it's on our homepage. And we're very excited to be continuing to perform it. And I think we feel like, you know what, it's been, 10 years. Will it feel old? Will we feel old? will it not feel fresh? But I think right now there's this need for joy and for whimsy that I think we all need. Like, yes, we need to think about hard things, but my gosh, sometimes you just need to watch some squirrel steal some underpants, because you know what, joy is actually medicine, and as much as people might not think it is, it is.
There's so many fun puppet moments, and I got to tell you, one of my favorites was when the squirrel arrives on the boat, and it's just this little teeny moment where the boat's on stage and the squirrel's on stage, and he does this little kick and he just kicks the boat away, and I just lost it at that moment. I just thought that is so on character for the squirrel that he's there, and it's like he, like the boat was just a device that he got, boom, and then it's no preciousness about it, and they're like right. And I thought that was such a brilliant moment. Like, do you have a favorite puppetry moment in Squirrel or any of your other shows that you just think, oh, every time I do this is just dialed in?
Oh, there's so many moments. There's in Squirrel, I think the moment I sit with the squirrel is still in the, I'm giving it all away, everyone. Yeah. Just spoiler. So Squirrel is taking the underpants, and I'm sitting down with a mini me doll, which is a small version of me, and she just sits down and she looks around and she's just like, I'm really sorry. I'm so sad. And there's this awesomeness of like, everyone accepts that this puppet represents me, that it is my doll, that it is a puppet, that I'm not here. Like, you can look at this scene in so many ways, and she still just looks down and shakes her head. And I love those dual moments, which is really, really special. And then in Tiny Monster, I sit down with Grandpa, which is this brown puppet, and we start reading a book. And the book is, of course, Architecture for Monsters. And I fall asleep, and he tries to keep waking me up. And every time I do it, it makes me laugh, because I don't know, I find it really funny. But that's part of what you have to do, is it has to bring you joy. And that one just cracks me up. So
absolutely. Well, Bonnie, it's been just so lovely getting to chat with you for a little while. I'm so excited to get to see what you do next, and the different directions that you're going. Thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun to chat and to think about work and all the people who I care about in this community who hold me up and you don't even know it. And every person I've ever performed with, and slams and all these things, like, it's a really special community.
Good. Well, listen, I hope everyone joins us for our next Meet Our Mentors, which is on February 9th. We have Christine Papalaxis. She'll be joining us. And then on March 9th, we have Peter and Debbie Allen that will be joining us as well. So we hope you tune in with us. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And Bonnie, thanks again to you. We will see you all later. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.